Good evening. Good evening. I'm John Mika, the president of Founding Forward. As I think you all know by now, Founding Forward is the nonprofit charity that's affiliated with the Union League of Philadelphia. It's the merger of two wonderful charities, two organizations that have been doing civics education, history, and supporting in a variety of different ways the United States military and, most importantly, the troops and sailors and soldiers for many, many years. So tonight's a very special program. As many of you know, we've been doing teacher programs here at Liberty Hill this summer. This is the final week of our teacher programs. We've had 7 different teacher programs and 5 speakers that have come to Liberty Hill to share some of what the teachers are learning. And this week's program is on World War I with a special emphasis on the Medal of Honor and character development. And I want to take a moment. We have teachers with us tonight from across the country: California, Illinois, Nebraska. We've had teachers this summer from Alaska and North Dakota and Oklahoma and Florida and everywhere in between. And I want to ask, I know we have some teachers here, if you would stand and just be recognized. And everyone, please thank these teachers for being with us. On behalf of Founding Forward, I thank you for all that you do to help your students and help our country. It is much needed civics education, as we all know. So a couple of housekeeping items before we begin. If you would all please take a moment to silence your cell phones. We will have a Q&A at the end of this program, and we will do that with microphones. There'll be staff that'll be stationed throughout the audience. Please use the microphone because we are streaming and we want our audience virtually to hear your questions as well. So we do all this with voluntary contributions. It's very little of our funding comes through fees. Some does, but it's very, very small amount. What we do is made possible through contributions from league members and others who support this work, the civics education, as well as all the other great programs we do. So we are about to start our new annual fund year. We need your help because as much as we've been doing a lot of great things, much more is needed. And please, please give generously and support this work of Founding Forward. It's needed more now than ever. So the Union League of Philadelphia is founded in 1862. One of the first things they do is they put together a committee. They put together a lot of committees. That's what they do at the Union League of Philadelphia, as you all know. One of them is the military committee, which is founded to recruit Union troops to defeat the Confederacy. It's been around since 1862, this committee. And appropriately tonight, we have the chair of that committee, which is now the Armed Services Council, who will introduce our program. It's Mike Rounds. Mike is a Union League member who is retired Lieutenant Colonel, United States Army. He is also the president of Williamson School of Trade, which is a wonderful school out here in suburban Philadelphia. And it's my great honor and pleasure to introduce the man who will introduce this program, Mike Rounds. Mike.
Thank you, John. And it's great to have so many here tonight, so many teachers. We appreciate what you do. My father was a teacher when he graduated from college. His first job was in Belcourt, North Dakota at the Turtle Mountain Indian Reservation teaching biology. So I'd love to meet the North Dakota teachers. I grew up in Minnesota and spent 25 years in the Army before retiring and moving out here. And this is just such a wonderful, the Union League, Freedom Foundation, and the new Founding Forward is such a wonderful organization. So thank you, teachers, for what you do and for being here tonight. As John mentioned, my name is Mike Rounds, Chairman of the Armed Services Council. It's my privilege and honor to introduce our guest speaker this evening. Sergeant Alan J. Lynch is one of only 61 living Medal of Honor recipients. He joined the Army after high school and was stationed in Germany before serving in the 1st Cavalry Division in Vietnam from May of 1967 to June of 1968. It was for his bravery in battle near the village of Mai An on December 15th, 1967, that he received the nation's highest award for valor in combat, the Medal of Honor. The recognition of this conspicuous gallantry and selfless service to others on that day would be the catalyst for a life of service to others. After returning from Vietnam, he served in the Department of Veteran Affairs and became a chief of Veterans Rights Bureau in the Illinois Attorney General's office. In his memoir, Zero to Hero, From Bullied to Warrior, he recounts his experiences overcoming intense bullying during his childhood and his personal search for something greater than himself during the Vietnam War. It's also the story of the consequences of surviving a war that so many fellow soldiers did not return from, and learning to allow his family and friends to help him with that struggle. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Sergeant Alan J. Lynch.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I have to tell everybody as we start that you got in your car and drove 13 hours to be here with these teachers and with this audience. And so thank you for coming.
Oh, my pleasure. It was great, a great drive. Until I hit the Appalachians. It's under construction, you know. So much fun.
So you have this amazing memoir that you've written and telling your story. And I let's go to the beginning. Tell us about your childhood. You grew up in Chicago.
I was born in Roseland on a dark and stormy night. October 28th, 1945. I miss being a boomer by that much. And grew up in I spent my first 6 years in Roseland. I love to tell kids that when I was their age or going through kindergarten, I used to walk 5 blocks to school across a busy street all by myself. And I didn't have any, when I rode my bike, I didn't have any head pads, arm pads, knee pads, butt pads, no pads. And if you fell down and hurt yourself, you just fell down and hurt yourself, and you learn not to fall down. And then we moved to from the neighborhoods in Chicago to Homewood, and then out to Lake Eliza, Indiana, where at the age of eight or nine, I could grab a 410 shotgun and go hunting rabbits and go wander the woods all by myself. We would ride 3 miles down the road to Lake Eliza and go swimming without any parental supervision. None.
But there was parental supervision in the expectation.
Oh, Lord,
particularly
yes.
that your dad had.
Yeah, my dad, well, both of my parents came out of the Great Depression and World War II. So there was no waste in our house, and everybody worked. And I thank him because I have a work ethic that at 78, I still have to accomplish something during the day, or I don't feel like I'm worth much. That comes from having those kind of parents. But my dad started working when he was just a kid in grade school, because back in the Depression, everybody worked, everybody had to earn something. And my dad used to get up and help his stepfather, on a milk wagon. And that was the way it was, and then came World War II. And so I woke up in the morning to reveille. And in my house, my dad's house, if he was up, everybody was up.
Mm-hmm. So dad served in World War II, as did your uncle?
I had 3 uncles. My Uncle Dick and Uncle Jack were both Navy veterans. My dad was in the Army Air Corps. If there's anything wrong with the Navy, they're a fine service too. Mostly. bus drivers for the Marines.
So, so that influence was of the veterans in your life was very important. You moved to Lake Eliza and middle school years, late elementary, middle school years, and you have what is in as you describe it in the book, some ways a classic experience of bullying. It's kids knocking books out of your hands. It's, you know, really tormenting you regularly for no reason.
Yeah. You know, back in my day, the law of the playground was boys had to earn their place. And my mother was very much of a pacifist. And because in the 50s, as my dad would say, a man's job is to work and the mother's job is to stay home and raise the kids and do all of that very important stuff. So my dad would work 2 and 3 jobs so my mom wouldn't have to work. And he would actually get pretty depressed if she had to occasionally get a job for a few months because we fell behind in our bills. So I saw very little of my dad even during the weekend because he was.
No, you didn't. Keep talking.
Good. Because he
would have. So my mom was my biggest influence. And she had me convinced that because I'm a big kid, if I ever hit somebody, I could knock out their eye or break their jaw, which, you know, created this image. Now, here I am being beaten up all the time. My eye ain't popping out of my head and my jaw ain't getting broke. I had fat lips and black eyes and bloody noses and hurt feelings and all kinds of stuff. But, you know, fear motivated me and it was irrational. And when I was writing the book, I kept wanting to go back and slap myself in the back of the head and go, fight, you idiot. But that was kind of the way it was back in the 50s, is boys were aggressive and we were supposed to be. And so boys would be boys. And if you didn't fight, well, stuff happens.
And one of the consequences that you describe is the friends who you had during the summer playing baseball or that you had, you know, developed really fell away.
Yeah.
And you became very isolated.
Yeah, that's where I learned that's where I developed my love of history, was in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade and high school. I had places in the woods where I could hide. We had a big oak tree in our backyard. I would climb way up as far as I could get in it with my canteen of water and one of my books and sit there and read all day. And my mother would be looking for me and I would just be up in the tree reading my books.
But what I find really interesting is you never were looking for sympathy or excuses. You looked at this experience, as all of your life's experiences, as ways to grow and ways to learn lessons.
Well, I didn't know it then. It was kind of a serendipity thing. I learned to be comfortable in my own skin without learning to be comfortable, without knowing I was doing that. Reading books, and then, you know, realizing that I had what they call fair weather friends. They were only there when they wanted something, or, you know, I was, you know, always the last kid picked and all of that kind of thing. So I thought, I don't need friends. And I still have that kind of an issue now because it really impacted me the way I had to deal with things.
And that's why getting in a car and driving 13 hours is fine.
Yeah. Well, I got Audible. What's not to like?
So you move from Lake Eliza back closer to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
You're in high school. Things are better, but not great.
Yeah. But the die had been cast. I tried to create a new persona. So I kind of changed things on the outside, but change comes from within. And so the first time a kid stood up and, you know, called me out, I was right back to being that bullied kid. So I had very few friends in high school. I did nothing in high school. I went to school and came home. My study halls were spent in the library, where I did barely my homework. The only thing I got A's in was geography and history. The rest I could care less about. I got straight D's in English for 4 years. I often think of Mrs. Ward now, having written legal briefs for when I was taking cases before the VA. I'm not a lawyer, but I had the most fun that you could be without being a lawyer. And I always think of Mrs. Ward every time I wrote a brief about, she'd be kind of proud of me now.
So you get through high school, and what drives the decision to join the Army?
I had nowhere else to go. I was too dumb for college. I came from a blue collar family that couldn't afford sending me to it even if I was smart. I had no use for the trades because I didn't like to get dirty. That's why I joined the Army. And I knew I was going to get drafted, so I wanted to make my own decisions. And I wanted to chart my own course. So I joined the Army, which shows you just how smart I am.
So you join the Army. It is not the straight and narrow path to the Medal of Honor, though.
Oh,
It
God,
was, basic training in Fort Knox.
And then I went to advanced infantry. Well, see, I was going to be a clerk typist because I could really type well. It was one of the skills I got out of high school. Still used to be able to type, as fast as you could talk until my hands went screwy. So evidently I thought. So I tested really high when I went into the Army. So about 4 weeks into basic, I get called down along with some others to the battalion commander's office, and he says, "Would you like to go to officer candidate school?" I'm thinking, gee, my mom and dad would be so proud to see me as an officer. So yeah. So then I had to change my military occupational specialty, MOS, from clerk to 11B infantry, Queen of Battle, follow me. So I went to infantry OCS. I lasted 4 weeks. I had grown a lot in basic training and advanced infantry, just not enough. I was still a kid. In OCS, as it should be, there's a lot of harassment, a lot of things, and I had enough. Some little second lieutenant whose eye I wanted to pop out and whose jaw I wanted to break caught me bringing pogey bait, which is stuff you're not supposed to have into the barracks. And
You have to tell the story. You had a bag.
Okay, all right.
Tell the story. It's a great story. You should have gotten away with it.
I should have, except for that little TAC officer. So what we were told not to do things and then encouraged to do them. So you can't have pizza, but you should have a pizza party. If we catch you, it's going to be pure hell. So we had our pizza party, we got caught, and they ran us around the airborne track until we painted the airborne track a different color with what you might happen after you eat a lot of pizza and then have to run. So it was my turn to go to the PX. I had to buy the pogey bait. So I'm pretty smart, SMRT. I load the bottom of my bag with the pogey bait. I put in the top of the bag all the stuff that we could have. Brasso to shine our brass, things to put under our bunks so we wouldn't scratch the floors, denatured alcohol, Johnson's floor wax, and diapers, and all this other stuff on the top of the bag. So I get back to the barracks. I'm going in. I'm just far to the door. And this little TAC officer comes out. "Candidate Lynch, what do you have in the bags?" Well, the honor code is, pretty much, I will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate anyone who does. So I started naming things very slowly. "Sir, in the top of in the bag I have denatured alcohol. Sir, in the bag I have," and on. And he kept going, and finally I got down to could name nothing else. "Sorry, I have pogey bait. Oh my God, you have pogey bait. Oh Lord, dogs and cats living together. Oh geez, I want a company formation." So I go into the company, we could fall out. I have to sing to everybody in the company 153 times, here's some candy I bought for you. They had to sing back, we thank you. Funniest thing that ever happened to me. I was so mad. I was so angry. I couldn't even speak. He comes up after this is over, and I'm kind of standing like, that, with my hands on my hips, very unmilitary. And he said a few words. I went to parade rest. He said, you'd like to take me out to the obstacle course, which was right down the street. I said, yes, sir, I would very much like to take you to the obstacle course. And so we start walking out. I don't know why he said, but, he said, candidate Lynch, he says, you're going to get cut next week. He said, you could be out right now drinking beer within the next 2.5 hours. All you have to do is drop on request. So I dropped. I went to my battalion commander, who was Colonel Nett, who earned the Medal of Honor in World War II. I saw him, reported. He said, we can recycle, you can do this. And I said, I want out. Best decision I ever made. I was drinking beer that afternoon at the PX, watching poor OCS candidates go out and running around, and ended up in Germany after that.
So let's talk about Germany. This is a big deal for a blue-collar kid from Chicago. Dad never left the United States in World War II. He served honorably, but didn't, make it to Europe. You end up in Germany. You even become a squad leader for a couple.
Well, that was a basic.
Okay.
In Germany, I was part of they put me in mortars. I was trained infantry. I hated mortars. I was in 81 millimeters. I hated it. I was a assistant gunner, so all I did was run out with aiming stakes and do stuff like that. And I didn't want to learn it, and so I didn't care for it much. And then some things happened. I started actually, as much as I hated my job, I started liking the Army. And I was starting to grow a lot, but in different ways. And so I re-enlisted, and I re-enlisted for Berlin, Germany. And it was really nice because it was not the long field problems that we had in the zone in West Germany, because it was still a divided country at the time. And Berlin was really nice. Most you could go to the field was 5 days.
So the decision to go to Vietnam was yours. You wanted to go. Explain to us why.
2 Article 15s.
Those are the veterans. They know. Tell us what happened.
So the first Article 15, I told my squad leader all about his heritage and what kind of a mother he had and things. And so I got 15 days confined to the barracks, 15 days extra duty, 7 days pay, and a suspended bus from E4 to E3. The second time I was actually trying to do a good thing. A buddy of mine went AWOL because he got some bad news from home. And so me and another guy went out to find him. We went to a guest house where we knew he was, and we tried to convince him over a few beers to come back. My first sergeant and my platoon leader walked in, and he got off because he had a letter. I, along with my buddy, got 15, 7 and suspended bust. And I thought, this is getting old. I won't put what I actually said in there. And Vietnam was really going, and was like, I wanted to prove myself to myself. I had gotten to a point where I had gotten past that being a victim kind of thing, but I needed to test myself, and I wanted to test myself in a way that only combat can test you. So I volunteered for the 1st Cavalry Division and infantry, and I got it.
So finally, infantry.
Finally infantry. Thank you.
So you are in Vietnam. You go through the sort of standard arrival. You're in your unit is doing raids and a number of things. There are 2 incidents that really sort of tapped into that well of anger that you still carried with you. One of them was your buddy Jerry. Tell us what happened.
We had a kid from New York. His name was John. His real name doesn't matter. A smart mouth, knew it all, know it all. Just a real piece of work. Being very polite, very, very polite. And Jerry was from Shullsburg, Wisconsin. And I used to go to Wisconsin a lot fishing and with my mom and dad, for vacation and that. So we spent a lot of time talking about things. We came in country together. He was a real good friend. We shared sea ration. He was one of these guys that he got a care package, everybody shared the platoon and the squad. Just a stellar guy. And we had just had lunch. We were actually in Dakto Khantum province, and we were in a forest like Wisconsin. I mean, they had the whole 9 yards, trees and things, not a lot of wait-a-minute vines and stuff like that. And we were talking about getting back to the world and fishing and stuff like that. And we moved out. We were point platoon, which means we were out in front. And as we moved out, not 75 meters down the trail, our point man signaled that we had movement to our front. And there weren't supposed to be any friendlies out there. So we thought we were going to move to contact kind of situation. So we immediately took up fighting positions. Jerry got behind a tree. I got behind some stump, kind of a fallen maggot-eaten tree. And John got behind us. He was the 60 gunner. And all of a sudden we hear the ceasefire, 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 they're friendly. We passed it on down. And we're not whispering. We're ceasefire, ceasefire, they're friendly. Jerry stood up, I stood up, and John pulled the trigger of the machine gun and shot Jerry in the chest. It jammed on the first round. He hadn't cleaned the machine gun at all. Had they been, we'd have been in chemistry. So he medevac Jerry out. Unbeknownst to me, he dies on the helicopter. As soon as John killed the fight. And I said, if he dies, you're done. Had gone beyond rage, and it was now just cold and calculating. All I wanted to do was to, shall we use those? All right. Can you hear me now? So what I did was carried on with the business of the day. We moved out. We started getting the reports. Jerry's on the helicopter. Jerry's fine. Jerry, they operated on him. He's going to Japan. He's going to get medevaced home. Unbeknownst to me, he was already dead. We had moved to an area where we were guarding a Chinook that had been shot down. And we were in a big perimeter around the Chinook, waiting for them to come in with a sky crane and take it out. And one of my buddies, it's about 4 days later, one of my buddies came back from R&R, and I said, did you get to see Jerry before he left? He says, yeah, I had to identify his body. So for these 4 days, I was told about what a great guy Jerry was, how, John was just kind of, he was beside himself and blah, blah, blah. And so I went away and I had a smoke and I was thinking of how I'm going to kill him. And then a buddy came up who I wish I could remember because he probably saved me from going to Long Bin Jail, LBJ. He said, if you kill John, there's going to be 3 families that are going to be missing their son. Jerry's family, your family, because everybody heard what you said, what you're going to do. He said, and John's family. He said, but here's the thing. He says, he's going to have to live with what he did the rest of his life. And so I finished my smoke, had another one, and then I went back and I told John I wasn't going to kill him. I said, you're going to have to live with the fact that you killed one of our own because of the kind of a person you are. And I said a few names. And here's the thing, and I had to go through some therapy to come to this point. But here's the thing, John ended up changing himself. He had a choice. He could go down the same path he was on, which was not very good, or he could change. And it took him a very long time to get back into the platoons and the company's good graces. It was not easy for him. But he turned himself around. When I left Vietnam, he was a squad leader. And when I talk to students about this, I tell them that if this guy who did this can change his life, there's nothing you can't do to change your own. He had a choice. And then I used that as part of when I was in the Army Reserves, is what we call the non-commissioned officer development program. And I teach the fact that John got passed along. He was just passed along. He was somebody else's problem. Kind of what we do today with a lot of things. Just kick it down the road. Don't deal with the problem. Just kick it down the road. Well, somebody, because of what happened with John, paid for not dealing with John when he should have been dealt with. So
Before we get to December 15th, there was one other incident that, if you had not grown as much as you had, might have resulted, and that was Captain Hardcore.
Yeah. He, his daddy was a general. And he got to Vietnam and he called all the NCOs and officers together. We were on an LZ landing zone. And so he came in and he called all the NCOs and officers together, and he said he was going to earn the Medal of Honor. And he was a real piece of work. We would be humping our packs. Talk about leadership. We would be humping our packs, and he would have his pack carried out in the morning on a slick, on a resupply bird. And we would be walking through rice paddies, and he would be walking on the rice paddy dikes. Now, here's what he didn't know, is the Viet Cong mined the rice paddy dikes. And as we're walking down these rice paddies, which are, let's just say, they're not the most hygienic place to walk in the when they're filled with water. And we would often, gee, we would not be disappointed if he tripped the wire or something. He was we had officers that, some officers were really good. Captain Orsini was one. But this guy would fly in a command chopper as we would be going up a hill on a search and destroy, screaming at us to get moving faster, which was not a good idea to do. Carefully, not faster. Captain Orsini always humped with us, but we were on Hill 724 where we had to take care of some 4th Infantry that walked into an ambush, and we had to take care of their bodies and that. We were getting them out. He was going to send a 12-man patrol from Hill 724 to another hill. It was a kind of a saddle. It was, one hill connected to another hill, and he was going to send them out. And we had been in contact almost every night. They were always probing our positions. And the day that he was going to do, the day before the night that he was going to send this 12-man patrol out, which was just large enough to be seen and just small enough that he would have to ride to the rescue, he got hit by a single, I still say it was a frag, but the report said that he got hit with a mortar round that came in and just happened to explode by this helicopter that he was going out to mail a letter in. He got medevaced out. Day or two later, we got Captain Orsini, one of the best officers I ever served under. one of the two best officers I ever served under, Captain Orsini and Captain or General Mukoyama, who was my battalion commander when I was in the reserves.
So I'm so glad you got to Captain Orsini because he is with you on the day of the action that for which you received the Medal of Honor. So December 15th, 1967, Mayon. Tell us about Mayon and tell us about the mission that you're on and what happened.
It was a how do we do this? Picture a checkerboard, like what is it? Tic-tac-toe. Picture a tic-tac-toe. A company walked into one of the squares and got hit from three sides. So they were dug in and they were trying to stay alive. We had been pulled out of the field because we had been in the field for over 60 days, except for just come in like 24 hours later and get out. So we were back on an R&R. We had gone to town. We had had a few and enjoying a USO show on LZ English. And we got a warning order that at 0:30 the next morning, we were going to air assault out to relieve A Company who were getting their butts kicked. And so we air assaulted out. Unbeknownst to me, and I didn't know this until I read Captain Orsini's journal that he gave me a few years ago, that Lieutenant Roy Sutherland wanted to join our platoon, become our platoon leader. So he petitioned Captain Orsini. Captain Orsini said, wait until we get done with the air assault, wait until we get done with the day, and then you can do it. He pushed it and pushed it and pushed it. He wanted a combat command. And Captain Orsini said, you go to brigade. If brigade will let you do it, you're good to go. So I was his radio operator, his RTO. And so I'm his shadow. Wherever he goes, I go, because we're connected by a telephone line, not like today where they have these little phones and can do cool things. I carried a 25-pound ANPRC 25 with smoke grenades and all kinds of stuff to go along with it. So I'm his shadow now on the day that we air assault in. And we're moving out and we're doing things and we go to relieve A Company and we go to hit the enemy from the side. Well, we walked into the other side of that checkerboard or that tic-tac-toe and we got ambushed. So under fire, Captain or Lieutenant Sutherland goes charging to the front. I go right behind him. Very brave man. We start taking a lot of fire. One of our point, we walked a two-man point. I'm going to tell you the way I remember it, which is how I wrote it in the book. One of our guys, Wilhelm, comes running back, gets shot about halfway to us. I go out to get him. We get him back. He says, Sergeant Casares has been shot in both of his shins. I asked the LT if I could drop my radio and go. I did. I run out, crawl down the ditch to him. He's really badly hurt. I'm trying to figure how I can put him on my shoulder and carry him in his M16 and all that back to friendly lines, which was probably 50 meters away. And Joe Esparza comes running across and gets shot. He was hit like a linebacker, went right down. I went out and I got him. I bring him into the trench. And there we are. And we have a hedgerow to our front, a bamboo hedgerow, which is real thick. We can hear the VC talk. And every time they talk, we kill them, which should have taught them a lesson, but they just kept talking. And we were very quiet. Unbeknownst to me, our unit withdrew and withdrew a good ways away. And so Captain Orsini is going to lead a rescue mission to come get to us. And he tells Lieutenant Sutherland to stay back. And he says, no, they're my men. I'm going out. He goes on the first mission out to get us and gets shot and killed. Evidently right where I had left him. So, and I didn't know this for years. So they try one more time to get us. They back an APC, armored personnel carrier, up to us. They lower the ramp to go in. I mean, I could see inside. We were that close. It got hit by an RPG. Blew Captain Orsini out of the turret. He's medevac. They go away. And then they call in continuous airstrikes and artillery fire for a lifetime, and came very close to being hit. The jet flew over, and which is why I wish I would have learned math, because the jet is treetop level and drops napalm, and I thought it would fall straight down, but oh no, speed and height and stuff like that means it's going to fall on an angle, which would have been nice to know, which is why I kind of wish I would have learned math. But there you go. So that ends. I go out and reconnoiter the area. I see where Lieutenant Sutherland was laying, and I move our guys out to a better area, and then keep doing these concentric kinds of things to try to find our unit. And next thing I remember, we're medevaced. And I am gone for a couple of days to get my things together. They put the guys that were wounded into the medevac, and they give me a little white pill, and then I drank some adult beverages, which I'm going to do in a little while, hopefully.
There's another bar, I promise.
Oh, thank God. And then they told me I was going to get the Medal of Honor. About a month later, we're doing bridge detail, and we were misbehaving. Let me just put it that way, on bridge detail. And so the next morning, I'm recovering from misbehaving the night before, sunning myself on top of one of our bunkers, and a Jeep comes by with my lieutenant in it, and he, by this time I had made sergeant. Sergeant Lynch, get your stuff packed. I just got my chewed because of you. I'll be back in a few minutes. And away he goes. I'm like, oh, well, the zipper stripes, here we go. Up and down, one more time. So I get down, he comes back, I get on the Jeep. He says, you weren't supposed to be in the field. Seems there was this Mexican-American guy named Manuel Perez who was left in the field in World War II and was put in for the Medal of Honor and ended up continuing to be in combat and got killed. And because of Manuel Perez, thank you very much, I get out of the field. So I spent the rest of my tour in Vietnam being a rear echelon male or female. Veterans know what it means.
There are a couple of lines in describing your experience that I just want to read back to you and get you to reflect on. You said, number one, there is no time to really think, just to act. And you said, under extreme pressure, we become our real selves.
Yeah.
Tell us what that meant for you, what that means for you now, looking back at that day.
I always used to get asked, what were you thinking when you went out and got the medal and did that stuff? And I would always either say, nothing, I wasn't thinking anything, because I wasn't. But as I started to reflect on things, I started to realize that when I went out and did that, it wasn't just me. It was the moral compass that my parents gave me, my grandparents, my extended family. It's what my drill sergeants taught me. It's that. That's why instead of, sitting there and doing nothing, I did what I did, because my parents raised me to look out for other people.
One more quote. You said that it reflected the collective values of those who raised, taught, and trained me.
Yeah, exactly. My dad and my mother, my mom sacrificed. She took in laundry, cleaned houses, not for pay, but for friends in the neighborhood, for people that needed things. My dad was always there helping somebody. My grandfather, before it was, in to give to the poor, was always doing things for the poor in the area. It was that kind of an upbringing that taught me. It was, Father Naughton, who taught me different things in the church when I was Catholic. He was a great man. My drill sergeant Wright. I'm a white kid from a white neighborhood. I get into the Army, and here's this drill sergeant Wright, officer and a gentleman. He was Lou Gossett Jr. Scared the hell out of me. one of the best people I knew as a trainee. Taught things that was really important, as did the drill sergeant and the bloody TAC officers in OCS. You never leave your wounded. You'd never leave your wounded was drilled into us. Falling out of the run wasn't done. It was that kind of thing.
There's so much more we could talk about, but I do want to get to Q&A. But I want to ask you one more thing. You come home, you get married, you receive the medal from President Nixon. You're working with veterans, doing, really representing them in important ways. And there is a thunderstorm and a lightning strike that sends you ducking for cover in what we today would describe as PTSD, but at that time we didn't have a description. And that was a reality for you for a long time.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that and about what we need to be doing for veterans today still who suffer from this.
I used to take the bus to and from work, and I walked home. It was a hot summer day. It started to rain. I was soaking wet. I get into the house. I get rid of my clothes and take a shower, come downstairs. And the way she who must be obeyed, Susie said, there was a crack of thunder, a flash of lightning, a crack of thunder, and I was on the floor. She said, you got the strangest look on your face. And I have had a startled reaction ever since. I started remembering things and having, I won't call them flashbacks, but day mirrors. We call them intrusive thoughts. A lot of things like that. Survivor's guilt. I was pulled out of the field. My unit went north. They took a lot of casualties. I wasn't there. Just a whole ugly thing. And not being wounded and having this was just really weighing on me. And I became not a very nice person. I drank too much. I had a lot of not good thoughts about things. And I would ride this roller coaster. I would be fine. And then something would set me off and I would go right down into the depression. And I thought I could handle it. I tried every way in the world. I read self-help books. I, did a lot of other stuff. And it just finally, I got sick and tired of being sick and tired and got some therapy in 1992. Saw a therapist for a couple years. She had me go visit my buddy Jerry's grave. It was kind of old, something new. I visited Jerry's grave, which took me all morning to find it. I finally talked to a priest that was in this town of Schulzburg, Wisconsin. He sent me to the VFW commander who was tending bar, and he told me it was where Jerry was buried. So I went there. I left some things. I put it on a disc. I came home, showed my wife and kids what it meant. My youngest son, Brian Kloss, is named after Jerry. I couldn't remember Jerry's name because in the Army, we go by last names or nicknames. The Marine Corps and all them too. And that started the healing. And I had horrible Christmases, horrible Thanksgivings, because that's when a lot of stuff happened. I was kind of like Pagliacci during the holiday season, laughing on the outside, crying on the inside, and haven't had a bad one since. So you got to if you're a vet and you're going through stuff, get therapy. The other thing is I've worked with a lot of, through my foundation, about 22 veterans a day commit suicide. The most recent case was a veteran who left behind his wife and 3 kids and 2 kids they were caring for. And having walked down that trail a few times, only thinking of my kids, which I, attribute to, in my church, we call it a God thing. But this guy left a wife and 3 kids and 2 kids that are living. And he did it in the basement of their house. And we're now trying to help them out by giving them some money for rent and food. But we're not going to replace the parent that those kids are going to grow up without. And it was unnecessary because you wouldn't seek treatment. So if you're a vet and you're having problems, get your hind parts to a therapist, you can get some help for it. And the other thing is, it's not about you. It's about what you're leaving behind. Okay, enough said. I'm just really upset with it.
We have about 10 minutes for questions. So I'm going to ask you to, there are two microphones roving around. Raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question, and wait for the microphone. As we always say, no more than 2 sentences, and make sure it ends with a question mark.
Hi.
Hello.
I wanted to ask you if you've been, two-part question. Have you been back to Vietnam?
Oh, no.
Would you ever consider going?
I would have, but now, no. I'm way too old for that. I can barely travel down here. Back here. Back east, up north, down south, out west. Don't forget it.
I just was wondering, and I think it's great that you went to therapy, fantastic. And just who was it? Was it somebody that encouraged you to go to therapy, or did you come to that conclusion yourself? And what was the point that made you wanted to go to that?
I was too busy. I was getting to a point where I was thinking about too many negative thoughts. And I wanted, when I went in and saw her, I said to myself, we'll see what happens here. If I can't get fixed, then we'll do other things. And she wanted to put me on drugs right away. And I said, I worked for the VA back in the 70s, where stelazine, thorazine, and every other kind of zine, they turned you into a zombie. And I said, there's nothing wrong up here chemically that needs drugs. So my attitude was, and I told her, I says, I'll do everything you say, everything. I'm putting my whole self in your hands. You tell me what to do, I'll do it. And I did. And it wasn't easy. So I had to face a lot of stuff. Yes, ma'am.
There's a microphone coming. Just 1 second.
Oh, that's right. They're streaming. No, she didn't have any military experience. My doctor doesn't have to have cancer. But she really helped me. Yes, absolutely. And you can make me brag. I am my dad was a strict disciplinarian. My oldest son is 51. He is leading a team at AbbVie, has traveled around the country, has got his MBA. My daughter's a 6th grade teacher. She's got her master's. My youngest boy is working on his he was actually making more money than his friends who had master's degrees. This tickled me. He was a headhunter. Now he's been leading teams. He's now working for a defense contractor as a procurement specialist. So he's got a special needs daughter who's my buddy, and is a phenomenal father. So I got some great kids, and it's and great grandkids. But I was raised with this on the backside. If my mom cooked it, we ate it. There was no, I don't like the texture. None of that stuff going on. So yeah, absolutely I did. Gen X. The last good generation, no offense.
First off, thank you for your incredible service. And you look back at Vietnam and, a student of it. In every major conventional battle, Tet, Easter Offensive, when we fought head to head, we destroyed them. What we weren't prepared for was the phenomena of guerrilla warfare. So your thoughts and being in the field and seeing that and the command structure, obviously there were some issues where we were taking kids out of the academy and putting them in leadership roles, but they weren't really ready for this. We're ready to fight World War III, not a guerrilla warfare. And it's amazing, for many of us, I have my son learn from the war in Vietnam. And as Americans, we should never forget that and salute you for your service and what you did for our country.
The thing is, and I'm a lover of history. If you look at the Civil War, the Franco-Prussian War, and all of those, the generals that went in and fought World War I learned nothing from those wars. Nothing. Here we have airplanes, machine guns, some of the biggest artillery we've ever had in history. And these idiots are saying to their men, go up over the top and assault. Now, fast forward to Vietnam. We have generals that would not adapt to a changing situation. They wanted big tank battles. They wanted, like the French at Dien Bien Phu. Oh, if we could get, we go down here to Dien Bien Phu and boy, oh boy, we're going to really kick their butt. And they didn't think that the enemy was smart enough to fight. They were. They didn't think the enemy could adapt, adjust, and overcome. They did. And the same thing happened to us when we fought in Vietnam. But even more so, we never declared war. We never made it a national issue. And if you read, there's a great series of books written by Robert Caro on Lyndon Johnson. May he burn in hell. Because that piece of work had no business sending us to Vietnam. And he did it for politics, which is why we need a declaration of war before we commit troops to combat. With a declaration of war, the whole country has to fall in behind it, not some piece of work sitting in the White House that goes, oh, let's do this, because it's political. Which is why we went into Iraq and in Afghanistan, and which is why we got out, because some politician who had no vested interest in it other than financial and political. I'll get off my soapbox.
We have time for one last question.
I had a good experience. I've had friends that have gone private that have had good experiences. But see, the thing is you need to kind of be your own best patient, even if you go for health reasons. We have every ability to learn things about, whatever disease or disability we have. The same thing goes with mental health counseling. I had Betsy she saved my life because she listened. When I told her I didn't want to do medication, she was good with that. She let me kind of dictate part of that treatment. I had to commit trust to her, but she really did things to help me out. So I would recommend going to a vet center. Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant Alan Lynch.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And thank you Thank you to all of you. For all of you who have been all summer coming to these programs, thank you very much. We have one more summer program. It is going to be August 12th at UL National. So those of you who want to take a ride down to the shore, it'll be on the history of Eastern State Penitentiary. We'd love to see you there. Tell your friends. And thank you for being here. And we will see you either then or in September at our programs. Thank you very much.